With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoweh's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful ends for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more. Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. Michael Thompson with three amigos, Greg Sailors, Tom Benner, and S.J. Jennings. Good to have you guys. Good to be with. We got to keep talking about intimacy, oneness, and connectedness with God. We're in the middle of a series, started last week on the Four Pillars of Zoweh. First one's intimacy, oneness, connectedness with God. Number two is orientation, who you are, where you are, and the good God's up to in your life. Third pillar is that orientation leads to a man or a woman who can live with nothing to hide, nothing to prove, and nothing to fear, a life like Jesus lived. And then more love, more life, more freedom, the fourth pillar. And so we're on number one. Maybe,
part two of number one.
Maybe for 2020. I can just feel us. This is session number 89 of a series of
this is
intimacy.
Episode 99.
Yeah, this is episode 99. That's awesome.
So we're counting down the last couple here to our episode 100.
Listeners, the inside joke on this and why we're laughing about it is because this is central, critical, ground zero, foundational. It's what we were made for. Intimacy, oneness, and connectedness with God and with each other. We're made relation. When we talked about that in the first podcast, so I don't want to go into review mode.
No, but your point is really we could just talk about this and nothing else.
That's what we should talk about.
And that's what we should always be talking about.
And little else.
Yes, that's right.
I've got a couple stories from this week that I'm looking forward to telling. I do want to kick it off, though, with a scene from a film, Shall We Dance? It's a great story. Richard Gere, he's kind of going through midlife crisis, and this dance studio of all things kind of catches his eye. John Clark is his character, And so
he's typical businessman, raincoat, right?
Yeah.
Riding the train every day.
An accountant.
Yep. And he goes by this dance studio on the train, sees it, and it intrigues him.
Right. I know Jennifer Lopez is in it, and then
Susan Sarandon.
And Susan Sarandon is his wife, Beverly. So he's coming home later. He's happier. He goes into this dance studio and actually starts to take dancing classes. But what we're really
got a skip in his step.
And we don't advise this, men. Didn't really tell her what he was doing, but he was, and you said it from the quote from Heart of a Warrior last week, he's lost. I mean, he's functioning, but he's lost. He can do his job. He can provide. He can go home, but he's lost. And so anyway, he wanders into this top floor dance studio, and there's just a collection of characters and stuff in that. So Beverly, Susan Sarandon plays Beverly. She thinks something's wrong. She really thinks in this story that he's having an affair. She hires a private investigator to kind of follow him around. She meets the private investigator at a restaurant bar, and
he's not a good man. He's lost too.
He's a little bit lost too, yeah. But basically he says, "Miss Clark, your husband's not having an affair. He's dancing." Right? And so it leads to this other conversation really about marriage. Why do people get married? And they have this conversation. She's upset. She's kind of teary-eyed. I love what she says. And this is right along the lines of intimacy. It's more than romance, she says. It's that we have a witness to our life. You said it last week, Greg, knowing and being known. We have a witness. She says we have a witness to our life. And we promise I will see you. I will be here for you. I will be with you in life.
That's so powerful.
And
it is.
I just thought, oh my gosh, this is what we're talking about. And there's a reason why our hearts react that way, right? That's so powerful. We want that.
I'm texting my wife right now.
Okay.
Tell her I'm so glad I get to be a witness to your life.
A witness to your life. That's funny.
I'm not kidding.
So I want to, okay, well, while SJ does that, I'm gonna read from the new website. We invite all our listeners to go to zoweh.org, ZOWEH.org, and you'll find the four pillars that we're talking about for these weeks. But here's what we wrote about the four pillars of Zoweh. Number one, intimacy, oneness, and connectedness with God. We believe this is the fundamental pursuit of Christianity. This is the very thing we were made for. And the most precious thing was severed in the fall. The entire story of Christianity, the work of redemption, salvation, justification, sanctification, all pretty churchy words, good words, serve to restore us to a place of intimacy and connection with God. It's all about intimacy, connectedness, and oneness with God. Mm-hmm. So we kind of left last week with this turn into, I think, a question, SJ, about, so how has God been coming through the barriers, right, through the false self, through the woundedness? How has he been pursuing you? I remember you read from the I Disciple 365 Days.
Yeah, your story about being graded. Yeah.
Him coming after me, right? Mm-hmm. Him coming after me.
Setting you free of that.
I'll never forget another story. It was 2010. I'm writing Search and Rescue, The Life and Love That's Looking for You, first book. And it's a first book. I look forward to a second edition of that. It'd be fun. You were editing those. I need to edit me and do some of that. I'll never forget the C.S. Lewis quote that found me. We search and search and search for God, and then we're found. I loved it so much that it's not on me to find him. He's saying it's on him to find me.
And the implication is, if you would stop scurrying around, right, and looking under every shrub and under every coffee table trying to find me, I'd find you.
Yeah. It's hard though, man. I mean, the enemy is ferocious on this because
there's no doubt.
Like you read last week too, he doesn't want us to experience this intimacy.
Oh, we fill it up with everything we can. I mean, what's in the way? We talked about that last
He
podcast.
offers all kinds of things. So go back to some of the first times this thing turned for you, and it was God finding you, pursuing you for intimacy.
The first experience that I can articulate of experiencing God was actually when I came to faith in Christ. And the backstory on that was that I had been a spiritual seeker since high school, really reading books, exploring different venues, even went in the Peace Corps to Nepal to see, what Hinduism and Buddhism look like in real life. Took that whole journey, and I did meditation regularly, did all kinds of practices, was a vegetarian, even was celibate. I mean, I was really serious.
All in.
But I never had an intimate connection with God until this one experience, which was, and this is going to sound really strange, but when I first got married in 1980, my wife had 4 kids, and I was totally overwhelmed financially trying to make this all work. And so I ran into this guy who was offering this Amway opportunity, and it's just very enticing when you hear these stories of people that are successful and whatnot.
Especially when you need.
Yeah, and when you're in need and you're just hoping,
else, right?
And so I went to a rally in Washington, D.C., big thing, huge. And I had an experience listening to a speaker that really touched my heart in a very compassionate way, because I'm not going to get into all the details, but it just stirred something in me to the degree that when we got back to our hotel room, I was just undone. Something was on me. Something had come to me. And I told my wife, I don't know what's going on, but I want to go out and take a walk. And I walked the streets literally till 2 a.m. having this encounter. And the only way I could describe it was God was wooing me to him. I was probably the worst candidate you could think of to become a person of faith in Christ, because we had really rejected that whole avenue long before. But just so happens that there was a Christian church service the next morning because of people that are out of town. But what happened to me that night was I knew there was something very, very real that I didn't understand and I had never experienced before, and it touched me so deeply, and it felt so wonderful, and yet there was all these tears, and I couldn't tell you why, what that was all about. Even now, I couldn't tell you what those tears were about. But the altar call comes, and I had this encounter with the Father that all I can say is, I walked down there, they invite you down, and my wife was horrified, but she went with me because she didn't want separation. We both went down there, and I encountered this unbelievable love from this Father God. And the way I would describe it, what was downloaded into my heart, it wasn't anything verbal or audible. What I got from the Father was this message deep in my soul that everything's good between you and me.
That's so good.
There's
Tom.
no more. You don't have to feel guilt and shame about your life, about your story, about the stuff you've done, and your regrets, all that. that we all have. We all have had. Maybe many of our listeners have gone through the journey of disconnecting from that part of our lives. But that was the most intimate moment probably that I've experienced even till this day. And I've had many more, but that one was the big one. I mean, it was the beginning, so much so that we were so all in. Literally, we were going out the door of the ballroom there where they're having this. And I remember saying to my wife, I said, "Oh my gosh, we're Christians. What are we going to tell our friends?
What do we do?
This is going to be very awkward, you know."
Yeah.
That's so funny.
And even practicing on the way home in the car, saying Jesus, because it sounded so strange coming out of our mouths. But I mean, we never looked back. We never questioned it from that day forward because it was so powerful, so real.
What occurs to me in that story, as you tell that story, that beautiful story, Tom, do you think one of the aspects of intimacy with God is a freedom from judgment?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good one. That's a big one.
Maybe that's what you experienced in that moment that you had never experienced before.
Well, and we talk about this a lot, but we all have a father story, and some are better than others. My dad was a very good man, very honorable, and taught me many, many good things, but I never felt like he approved of me. I never felt that feeling of it's all good between us. There was always something that I was afraid he would find out, or if he did find out, then he wouldn't forgive me.
Yeah, I want to keep telling stories about this because it's really, really important. And before we break, I think that what you're saying, Tom, and what we would describe to in our conferences, that thing that got touched in you, and I've heard you say this in front of hundreds of men at many of our different conferences, was an organ of perception, the heart.
Yeah, that's good.
That your heart was awakened, it was touched, something massaged it, something moved in it or to it or knocked on the door of it, something that as we try to describe the mystery of this. But I want to tell these stories and I want to make very clear that it's your heart he's after, this organ of perception that does get crushed and wounded and clouded and closed. And this is not some Hallmark card idea. The heart is a real part of this conversation. Longing, desire, and want, beliefs and attitudes. I mean, as we've studied this, as we've presented this, as we've written about this, I think you defined it so well and when you shared this organ of perception. This is the gospel in a way that impacted you and affected you. And I want to read this from The Sacred Romance, Brent Curtis. He says, "The truth of the gospel is intended to free us to love God and others with our whole heart. When we ignore this heart aspect of our faith and try to live out our religion solely as correct doctrine or ethics, our passion is crippled or perverted, and the divorce of our soul from the heart purposes of God toward us is deepened."
Wow.
The divorce of our soul from the heart purposes of God toward us is deepened. When we practice religion, when we practice striving, when we practice hiding and fearing, and it is back to God pursuing us, coming after us, and
letting him find us.
And somehow, I don't know if the only little bit that we can do matters is feeling it.
The interesting thing about that, the doorway into that is the heart. That's what got opened. When I was hearing that man's story and the compassion that it stirred in me, opened something up in me that then God just went with. It was
that's good.
Yeah. So you guys know I have some medical training in my background and have seen some of that. But I remember speaking with a cardiac surgeon one time, and he talked about cardiac massage. So this is a real thing. I mean, I don't know exactly what the circumstances are that lead you to this place where this has to happen, right? But you're having open heart surgery, and the surgeon literally has your heart in his hand and is massaging your heart to try to get it to beat again, try to get it to come back to life.
Yeah.
That's all I could think of when you were sharing your story is God is looking for these opportunities to crack you open and take hold of this organ of perception and bring it back to life.
You know what I thought of? It's just so funny. I'm just going to tell you, the Grinch. Here's this little box, and they're still singing, they're still worshiping around the Christmas tree in Whoville, and he's saying, "No."
It's funny because it's true.
There's no presents, there's no trees, there's no roast beast, and that happens.
The awakening,
and then his heart is massaged, and it just grows. I mean, I cry every time I see that crazy cartoon because it's true.
It's true.
Well, his heart changes, right? His complexion changes, his expression changes. I mean, he's changed.
Yeah. Could you say that's a dot you could connect, that when your heart is stirred, it's God's up to
Follow
something?
that.
Yeah, wakes
Go
up.
there. Don't shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%.
Press in.
Yeah,
100%.
amen. Yeah, it's good.
Well, let's take a break, and then we'll come right back, and we'll tell some more stories. We'll be right back. Hey, podcast listeners, it's SJ again. Just wanted to make sure you all know about two major events we have coming up soon. We don't want you to miss out on the chance to sign up and experience a weekend that just might change the trajectory of your life. The first one I want to talk to you about briefly is the Heart of a Warrior Allies Advance. During the weekend, we'll explore the masculine journey and the glory of your life, how you uniquely bear God's image, and the redemptive friendships available when a man meets allies and brothers who will fight beside him for freedom. The format of the weekend includes small group dimension and conversations while continuing to offer critical moments of time alone with God. We hope you'll get away and hear God's voice, pursue more healing, more restoration, and invite the Father to validate and initiate you as a beloved son, a warrior heart, and a good king. The Zoweh Heart of a Warrior Allies Advance is coming up at March 19th through the 22nd at the Young Life Rockbridge Camp in Goshen, Virginia. And the Advance Weekend is designed for Heart of a Warrior Encounter alumni. And that's the next event I want to talk to you about, is the Heart of a Warrior Encounter. And during this weekend, we have three main objectives: help a man get his heart back, teach him how to fight, and show him where the battles are. To see Christ come for a man's heart and what God is up to in validating a man, initiating him, and calling him into the larger story is truly a glorious thing. It's a fierce journey for every man, but one that needs to be taken. So I would invite you to join the squadrons of men who are hungry and thirsty for more. The kingdom needs more men who know what it is to walk deeply with God. Come join us April 30th through May 3rd at the Heart of a Warrior Encounter Weekend. Again, at Camp Rockbridge in Goshen, Virginia. Come join us and be one of the men who is seeking and finding more. And there is more. For more details and further information, visit zoweh.org/events. And I hope to see you there.
Welcome back, listeners, to the Exploring More podcast, talking about intimacy, oneness, and connectedness with God, the first pillar of Zoweh. And, like we've said, pillars take a while to build. This isn't something we just necessarily came up with, but as we have been walking together for 13, 14, 15 years, this is one of those that's gotten another brick and become kind of a foundational corner of our mission, our vision, our strategy, and even our ministry, that this is the cornerstone.
It takes time to build things that last.
Yeah.
Right. Tom's a stonemason, has been most of your life, right? I mean, so I think about the work that you do and the work that's going to even outlast you. Mm-hmm. And because you do it right, because you and your company do it the right way. And that's what we're trying to do in the journey we've been on for more than a decade, trying to build these pillars so they last.
And this is why Jesus came, that we might have life. And you said it was the idea that we're made for that. And so we come alive when we're loved. We come alive when we experience intimate moments.
Mm-hmm.
And some that are so powerful when they're on a screen or they're in a song, you have to stop.
Yeah.
Or even look away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're too holy sometimes
holy
to be around.
Is a great word for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what we're talking about, and telling some stories of when this first began, when really, we're going to talk about the lover, the romance. That's what I think of with intimacy. And this is a part of every man and every woman. There's a part of our hearts made for that. And it can be attuned to that when God comes after the lover that we were created to be, because he wants to be in intimate proximity, closeness. And so Tom shared about when he first entered in and came to that. For me, Tom, I accepted Christ into my life a couple hundred times. Growing up in the church, it wasn't a one event. It was multiple events like that. But there still were some very eventful ones. You guys know the story, 38 years old. I'm hearing about the heart. I'm hearing teaching about this organ of perception. I'm hearing about the masculine heart, and I'm hearing about God's love and pursuit of me. I'm hearing some of this for the first time 17 years ago, Greg. And I remember my reaction was, it was so good. I felt like if this is true, it changes everything. I mean, and there it was. It was in the scriptures. It was being shared. It was literally launching me from service and obedience and trying not to sin into a whole other kind of gospel.
So I don't remember that moment, whether you immediately had the eyes and ears to see and to hear that, or were you more provoked to, okay, I got to investigate this?
Yes and yes, yes and yes, yes and yes. It was, I mean, to even investigate it, something was provoked, something was pierced. It's funny you ask it that way, because I guarantee you, I remember it wasn't, is this true? It was more like, if this is true. I mean, I was already squared up to it. I'm already heading in that direction, and that the God of the universe wants intimacy with me, wants to be in love with me.
Right.
Not just love me, and that's not untrue. I mean, scripture, but to be in love with me.
Yeah.
I just heard it. Maybe others had said it before, but I can only say I didn't hear it.
Right.
And so when I did hear it, it kicked in my oneness, one on the Enneagram. I got to check this out. I got to
sure this is right.
I got to get in the lab, and explore this. But I was so hopeful that it was true because I knew how it was making me feel. And, a lot of times we chuck feelings and say they're irrelevant. I call bull stuff on that, man. Intimacy is a feeling. Intimacy is an experience. Intimacy is an encounter. Your feelings, they don't always betray you, goodness sakes. But what is it when they're in alignment with God's pursuit of you? We're made to feel these things. Right. That's what makes us come alive, is being loved and enjoyed and wanted, and then offering the same. I mean, it's as wonderful to offer that to somebody and see them respond to your offer. It's a beautiful experience, and it feels a certain way.
I remember probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 years ago, going back and forth with you on that. Because I'm a type 8 on the Enneagram, so I'm the challenger. So, I said something or posted, I don't remember what it was, but you heard me say that love is not a feeling. And it's like I had poked you in the chest and said, you want to fight? I mean, you got riled up, and it was great because I needed to hear what you had to say. And it is a feeling. It is. Intimacy is connected to feelings. They're not entirely feelings, right?
And if the feelings aren't there, make a good choice.
That's right.
Choose well.
It's fine.
Do the right thing, even though you may not feel it.
But this thing that's been sold by some teachers, some of the ones I was listening to.
Christendom, 20th century Christianity.
That love is not a feeling, or their feelings are irrelevant. Yeah, I'm on your side of the court now.
That sounds like a white coat, sterile.
Yeah, no doubt.
Who wants that from a dog? Who wants that from their dad? Who wants that from God?
Right. It was good.
The things we were talking about earlier, things that are in the way, I was thinking about that, SJ, and how good what you were saying is, but how foreign and how that was unavailable to me because of some of the choices I'd made, the identity I'd placed on myself, the mixed messages, things that came from maybe parents and others about intimacy. It was really, the word marred comes up. I was stuck in this mire about intimacy. And because of those choices, I really had so much confusion. As I started to interact with this message, though, and I found, which is so important, I think, a lot of times to being able to wake up to intimacy, wake up to the Father's love, is I had a good father that came and began to love me. My dad had passed away many years before this. And so as I was starting to go through the counselor over some of the things I was marred up in, and I had this intersection with Jesus, kind of like a burning bush moment or a Damascus Road experience like Paul had. We did theophostic prayer, healing prayer, and we invited Christ to come to that place of damage, that marredness, And he did. This thing that happened to me, it wasn't just, hey, I love you, or you're all right. It wasn't that at all. He went into the midst of the mire, the muck, all the storm of my life. He wasn't scared, Tom, to go right in the middle of it and pull me out,
Yeah.
descend into hell itself, where I, in my 20-year-old self felt like I was in my Christianity that I grew up in, and go right in there and intimately come after me. And so that, when we're talking about intimacy, that was my first, I think, and most intimate moment, and something that so changed my life to know no matter what's going on, no matter what I've done, nothing's going to make me love you less. I'm coming after you.
Yeah. And I'm going to have you,
It's
and I know your
beautiful.
story, I'm going to have you keep writing it down until you believe it.
That's right.
That's
right.
In one of your encounters.
I'm going to keep massaging your heart
Yeah.
until you come back
believe
to
it.
life.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I'll check occasionally.
Yeah, sure.
Is this still true? Yeah, it is.
That's
It's still
good.
true.
That's great. I had a moment with God just a few days ago. It was so funny, but it was intimate. So I think I told you when I came into the tower that day. So shocker, I'm running a few minutes late. So I'm trying to hustle to the tower, meet you guys at 9:30 for whatever conversation we needed to have about the cool things God's doing. So I'm heading out the door and I've got my coffee and I didn't put it in a travel mug. I had
know
a
the
coffee
story.
mug. So I get in the truck. The tower's not far from my house, but I'm about halfway and I've got to make a turn. And something kind of jostles in the cup and coffee gets on my pants. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go back home quickly, pull in, change. It's going to cost me 10 minutes probably total, but now I'm going to be 10 minutes late rather than right on time. So I'm driving back to the tower and I realize I need to do something with the Zoweh credit card because I realized I left my wallet in my pants that had the coffee on them. And so it was just kind of one of those, we hurried and then the coffee and then the wallet and I've got to come in here and I don't have what I need. And I said, it was an honest prayer. I said, really, Lord? I heard him say, what? I didn't do it. And I just laughed in the truck. I came in here and told you that story. It was just an intimate thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't a joke. I just felt it was like something my dad would say.
Right.
What? I didn't do it.
I didn't do it.
you
looking at me for?
Yeah. And I just thought, I felt loved in all that as he only he can do. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying you felt the love of hearing him speak.
Yeah, and he's funny.
That familiarity.
He's actually funny.
Oh, yeah.
And can be a little bit whimsical.
Have you seen
silly.
the picture of a platypus?
Yeah, right.
God's funny, man.
Funny, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, with these stories, that's a recent one for you within the last week. And I think we want to talk about some more recent ones as well. Because that's one of the things that I love about Zoweh and how we operate at our weekends and just in our lives in general. This is a constant journey for us. We're not just recounting the same stories from 10 years ago or however long ago. This is an ever-present, continual growth for us.
Therefore, the title of the podcast.
That's right.
Exploring more. There's more.
Yeah, that's right. More intimacy and connectedness with him. So, Tom, you got a recent one you want to share with us?
Well, one thing I want to say about Michael's story, which is an important point to it, is having eyes to see and ears to hear is really important. To be listening, to be present, to be awake. Because I know when I was in Florida this last trip, for some reason, I had such wonderful eyes to see the beauty of God. There was sunsets almost every night that were unbelievable. Dolphins, osprey, pelicans. It would be very easy not to see any of that.
Yeah.
It would be not to realize the vastness of God's creation and the beauty of it just kind of unfolding for each of us every moment. And I was just thinking about that when I was down there. It would be so easy to not see, and I think that's part of like God's saying, hey, watch this, y'all. It's kind of like, check this sunset out. And all up and down the beach, there are people, from some of these resort hotels and stuff or some timeshares out there on their chairs. And when the sun went down, they would get up and cheer and clap and shout. And I thought, isn't that great?
Yeah.
Giving God a big way to go, God.
That is so interesting.
I love that.
I mean, it was phenomenal.
That's
every night. unless it was cloudy. But I mean, if it was a sunset,
Sometimes the clouds make it better.
Well, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you
The
know,
reflections
they
and
do.
stuff.
Right.
The
All
after, the
different
afterglow
colors that
kind
come
of.
with it.
Let me put that under the microscope for 1 second, because I think there's two things that we need to add to our intimacy components. One is time.
Yes.
So eyes to see and ears to hear requires time in the slow lane.
Yes.
I mean, which
Taste and see.
Which taste and see. Thank you for saying that, Greg.
Yes.
Which kind of dinner would you prefer? One with candlelights or one with a drive-through?
Right. Slow meals are coming back. you know,
I mean,
they're
but
good.
I think you really, really are offering us another huge ingredient. It's slowing down. And as you learn it, then it becomes a practice and you expect it. You're looking for it. But you have to go through those first trial and errors, those first times where you're invited to slow down. That's why we love at the conference weekends, time alone with God.
Yeah.
That's a non-negotiable within the conference.
Yep.
Was it you that said you don't want God to be your greatest secret admirer?
Right.
I mean, that makes the point.
Yeah.
You know, if it's all in secret, and if we can't see or experience or have the eyes to see what God is doing and the beauty, because the thing about our minds, the way they work, is we label things and we categorize it, and then it's kind of like, yeah, I've seen that before. I've seen a zillion sunsets. Yeah, I've seen pelicans. Sure, I know what a dolphin is. Just sort of like brush it off to be not nearly as magnificent and glorious as it really is.
I think we've lost wonder. You know,
I mean, my wife Pat
Childlike
was talking
wonder.
the other night when we were all having dinner about she went out to the mailbox and there's a little puddle at the end of the driveway and there was a hawk in there taking a bath, fluttering around.
Cleaning off.
I mean,
yeah.
That's a big bird. I mean, a hawk,
Yeah,
that's not
they
a
are
sparrow
big.
flipping around.
No,
I mean, so he had so all the rain we've had, he was in a big puddle then, big.
Well, it was probably only about 2 or 3 inches thick. I don't know.
Yeah, but
it would
God,
be fun to see, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's
I
awesome.
love that.
Yeah, they're beautiful too when they spread their wings and you see all the color.
Every now and then in the tower, they'll fly around, up here. Beauty's a part of
Yeah,
intimacy.
beauty's a big part of it.
Slowing down, eyes to see. I mean, these are great
Yeah.
additions to this conversation about what is intimacy, what does it look like, what's needed,
Yeah.
what's its
Intentionality.
intentionality, a date to have time with God.
I'm not sure if I've told this story on the podcast before or not, but Sherry and I, we take a vacation. We like to go on cruises and we like to go to the Caribbean because she likes palm trees and I like it warm and I like to make her happy personally. So we go on cruises and we're at this little island. It was one of the cruise lines. Now they all own their own islands here and there, which is kind of nuts to think about. But there's this little half moon kind of a bay that we were in. It was sandy beach all the way around. And we walked all the way down from where the little resort area was with all the lounge chairs. You could walk all the way out to the point where the rocks were and then turn around and come back. So we walk all the way down. And of course, there's a sign there that says, don't go any further. And I just walked right past it and kept going. And I turned back around. I actually got her. She's a type 1 on the Enneagram too. And she actually went past the sign with me, which was a huge undertaking for her. Maybe 10 feet past the sign.
Okay.
We're going to get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
I know this- I know the motto.
Helicopters are going to come. And
There's a camera somewhere, one of these rocks.
Yeah.
They
The
won't let us
captain's
back
going
on
to
the
scold
ship.
us when we get back. But so we walk down, we walk a little bit past this sign, and I turn back around, and I'm just I'm awestruck by the beauty of the moment. This water, if you've seen Caribbean water before,
Oh, yeah.
Blue,
palm
green.
trees, the half moon, beach.
White sand.
Just beautiful. And I said, wow, God, it's hard for me to believe you love us this way. We kind of basked in that moment for a minute. I took one step walking back and I looked down at my foot, and right in front of my foot was a heart-shaped little stone. I mean, it looks just like a heart made out of sand and stone. And I was like, really? Now you're just showing off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is unbelievable.
How many years did did it take to make that in the ocean, rumbling around or chip? I mean, to smooth it off,
that
to
moment.
covered up with sand for years and years?
Who knows?
And
And then the waves are delivered at the right time.
I'm telling you, the overwhelming feeling for me was not only that I'm loved by God, but that he sees me and he's hearing me.
Yeah.
I mean, this beautiful creation and then this extra little kiss on top.
Yeah. Listeners, please hear, if this is just a theological concept, hang on.
Yeah.
Ask him.
Mm-hmm.
Ask him to show you.
Taste and you'll see.
Ask him to reveal to you how he sees you
Mm-hmm.
and that he loves what he sees, that we're not making this shiz up.
Yeah. No.
But there was a
We
time.
couldn't.
There was a time when we were naive to it.
Oh, no doubt.
When it was more theory than it was practice. But
Yep.
thank goodness those days.
There was a time
behind us.
Sherry and I would go on vacation. She'd want to get up to see a sunrise or take a walk like that. And I'd say, nah, I don't really feel like it. You go ahead. And now I'm thrilled to be able to do those
Don't want
things
to
with
miss
her.
out.
That's
yeah.
good.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and land the plane on part 2 of intimacy, oneness, and connectedness with God. Listeners, if you got questions, comments, anything you want to share with us, email us at exploringmore@zoweh.org. Leave us a rate and a review that really helps other people find us on the podcast platform, whichever one you choose to use. And check out zoweh.org/events. We got a couple of cool events coming up.
New website.
Yeah, on the new website.
Podcasts are in order there.
That's right.
Whole
Easy
section
to
about
find.
podcasts, and great way to dial into that.
Yeah, and as always, we've got plenty of resources for you. Many of them are free. So check out our new website.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us on the Exploring More podcast. We'll be back next week with, I think, one more session on pillar number 1, intimacy, oneness, and connectedness with God. Thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you next week. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoweh.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoweh on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoweh on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.